Wait, how speedrunners conquered the world's hardest game? 0 deaths?
When something is titled the world's hardest game, it certainly has a lot to live up to. On December 15th, 2007, a 16-year-old developer named Stevie Krytoff, who went by the online alias Snubby, released a very special game to his website, snubbyland.com. At the age of 12, he started making short flash games and cartoons, uploading much of his work to both Newgrounds and Snubbyland to share his creative passion with the world. His games were simple and his animations were crude, but there was certainly something special brewing at Snubbyland Creative Media. In late 2007, Snubby spent several months piecing together a project that would be very different from anything that he had created.
This is the guy that created
he wanted
it?
to make a flash game so difficult that calling it the world's hardest game wouldn't be seen as a joke. The objective was simple. For 30 levels, one needed to maneuver a red square from one green zone to another, dodging the blue,
I've never
purple,
gotten even
and
close to
red
beating
enemies
this.
while collecting all the yellow coins along the way. Upon death, the player got sent back to either the beginning of the level or the last checkpoint with all collected coins wiped away. The game wasn't too difficult at the start, allowing most people to quickly clear the first few levels, but soon after, players would realize exactly what kind of monster they were up against.
Yeah.
By and large, the levels only get harder as the game progresses, and the game must essentially be completed in one sitting, as it does not save people's progress. Closing or reloading the browser tab means starting everything over from the beginning. If someone gave up trying to complete the last level, they would have to slog through the first 29 levels again just to get another shot at it. Upon completing each level, the game
Wonder who the
taunts
first person was
player
to
with
beat
a new
this.
snarky message, seeking to eat away at
This
their
one's
confidence.
easier than your
And
mother.
As the death counter in the top right creeps higher and higher, the immense frustration felt after failing a level just before the end is only compounded. The game truly pulls no punches. Upon release, it truly may have been the most difficult, but still completable, Flash game ever created. So that raises the question, who was the first player to conquer the
that's what
world's
I
hardest
asked.
game? Upon the game's release, Snubbyland was a website of pretty modest size. There were about 50 registered members who had contributed around 1,000 posts to the forums, around 400 of which had come from Snubby himself, and around 250 that had come from somebody named Mexifry895, the website's second most active contributor. He would be the first to leave a comment about the game on the 22nd of December,
That's
1
crazy.
week after its release, venting his frustration with level 10, a definite choke point that is noticeably harder than all the previous levels. The next day, someone named Ziggy claimed to make it to level 15. Mexifry gave more updates about his progress, and after struggling with level 22, Snubby jumped in to lend a hand.
Just time it right. Move between the boxes. You move at the exact same speed as the enemies, so just wait for the opening and go through.
He got stuck on level 23 for 3 days, and after finally clearing it, he swiftly labeled level 24 as being impossible. It appeared as though the rest of the game was going to be a complete slog, but by comparison, it ended up being pretty smooth sailing. On December 28th, with a final attempt session that lasted about 4 hours and recorded 689 deaths, Mexifry895 became the first victor of the world's hardest game. However,
689?
the leaderboard showed
what-
that the developer was still quite a bit ahead when it came to skill.
Oh, he beat it with 25 deaths?
Mexifry urged Snubby to post the game on Newgrounds so it could get more attention. The game was a clear hit with the few people that had the opportunity to try it out, and it certainly had the potential to become a smashing success. By March of 2008, the game had around 10 different victors,
15 deaths?
and somebody named Terrence had managed to complete the
Who the
game in
fuck
just
is
15
Terrence?
deaths, for less than Snubby's best. An obvious question began to loom. Was it possible for someone to conquer this titan without dying a single time? On March 21st, the game was published to its sponsoring website, armorgames.com, where it was finally accessible to a broader audience. In just 3 days, the game reached 60,000 plays, and it quickly began spreading to other prominent websites like Newgrounds and Addicting Games. By the end of the year, that play count was over 3 million. The game's easy to pick up, but tough as nails nature was able to swiftly hook countless
It's just, I don't know, I feel like
players
this is one of those games that just a shit ton of people have found their way to just trying this game.
wanted to see how difficult the world's hardest game truly was. However, what happens when you mix a game that 99.9% of players give up trying to beat with a platform that makes it trivially easy to access all of the game's assets and source code?
Cheaters!
People hacking popular Flash games and slapping them on shady websites wasn't exactly a new concept back in 2008, but there is no question that the world's hardest game had it worse than anything that had come before it. Players were able to vent their frustration with the game's difficulty by skipping to the end of each level completely unharmed. Countless people effortlessly skipped to the end and uploaded a score of 0 deaths to the game's official leaderboard. Indeed, within a week of the game being shared with the general public, the leaderboard was completely ruined. If someone wanted to prove that they got a 0 death completion of the game, they were going to need to get it on video. As I do with pretty much every single one of my videos nowadays, I spent hours searching YouTube to try to find
14
the
years
earliest
ago.
recordings that I could of full completions of the world's hardest game. To probably nobody's surprise, I found a boatload of early videos claiming to complete the game in 0 deaths, but were just recordings of that weird hacked version with smiley faces drawn on all of the green areas. Gotta love old YouTube. There was a lot of garbage to sift through, but I was able to find what I believe to be the first full playthrough of the game uploaded to YouTube. A 24 death completion performed by somebody named Hatredcopter on August 2nd, 2008. Because of the time limit restrictions that existed on YouTube back in the day, Copter had to speed up their completion to get it uploaded, cranking it to 2 times speed as indicated by the title.
Oh my
However,
goodness.
Upon analyzing the video, it became pretty clear that it was actually sped up by a factor of 1.5, making the completion a lot faster than some may have thought. Though Copter hadn't completed the game in the least amount of deaths accurately recorded, they did unintentionally claim the record for the fastest completion with video evidence, a time clocking in at 13 minutes and 13 seconds. The next day, they were able to cut their death's personal best in half, completing the game with just 12. 1 in level 12, 1 in 19, 1 in 23, 1 in 25, 2 in 26, 1 in 28, 2 in 29.
Wonder how
and
long
2
it
in
would take
30.
me if I grind
This
this
run
to
was
beat
also
it.
sped up 1.5 times, and slowing it back down to the proper speed yields a final time of 12:23, a new world record. Copter's completions of the game were certainly impressive, but it was obvious that there was still some room to improve, both death-wise and time.
Well, a big time saver would be like looking at each map how to see it's beaten. I feel like that's the biggest time saver about it.
On October 18th, 2008, the game would finally get the completion that it deserved, as someone named Hachiman became the first to record a 0 death completion of the world's hardest game.
That's crazy.
Surpassing millions of other players, Hachiman had become the master of the world's hardest game, completing the game with 0 deaths, 10 months after its release. If you have ever seen a video of this game on YouTube before, you have almost certainly watched either this playthrough or another one that we will get to shortly, as it currently holds the record for the most viewed video of the game with over 17 million well-deserved views. Hachiman eased into each level with composure, executing mostly predetermined movements with surgical precision without going too overboard. Time was somewhat of the essence, but speed was not the ultimate goal. Keeping that death counter unchanged was all that Hachiman needed to do to qualify the playthrough as perfection. If someone wanted to prove that they were the new champion of the world's hardest game, simply completing the game with 0 deaths was no longer going to cut it. Hachiman's completion just happened to clock in at 8 minutes and 37 seconds. Now, it was time to see how much faster the game could get. In July of 2008, Snubby released the next installment in the World's Hardest Game series, featuring 50 total levels, some new mechanics, a heightened level of difficulty, and music that was composed by none other than the first installment's first victor, Mexafry895. The game is so challenging that, to this day, nobody has managed to complete it in 0 deaths, with the current glitchless world record of 1228 by Danicker still having 7 of them. While both the sequel and the
that sounds like a tough
continued
game.
to receive massive amounts of attention going into 2009, it seemed like nobody was able to top Hachiman's record of 837. People may have thought that there wasn't much left to accomplish with the game if the death floor of 0 had already been reached, since people didn't really care about how fast they were completing the game. However, on September 28th, 2009, someone named Shiroma would prove everyone wrong.
That little
as he
fucker
uploaded a 0 death completion of the game that clocked in 2 seconds faster than Hachiman's record, 835. Shiroma just started as an average World's Hardest game player, initially giving up trying to complete the game after struggling immensely. However, he was eventually able to complete the game in 450 deaths, whereafter he started beating it over and over again to see how much better he could get at it. Each level got easier and easier, and eventually he was able to piece together his own 0 death completion. With no built-in goal left
I wonder
to
if Hachiman
accomplish,
will
he
take this
decided to
personally.
try speedrunning the game. He found the video of Hachiman's 0 death completion and used it as a reference for how he could more efficiently complete the game. After some practice and attempts, he was eventually able to produce the 835 as his first run. Expectedly, it was very similar to Hachiman's 837. And though they took somewhat different approaches in a lot of the levels, the overall theme of taking extra time to increase the odds of success was readily apparent. The best example of this is probably the long wait at the start of level 23 to get a more favorable cycle on the spinner. By including a timer with the video and labeling the completion as a speedrun in the title, it was clear that Shiroma wanted to fully prioritize how fast he could complete the world's hardest game. He had gotten another 0 death completion and the world record, but he was certainly not yet done with the game.
Oh.
For 2 months, Shiroma sought to improve
Getting
his
hungry.
approach to each and every level until it was as fast as it could possibly be. Practicing the later levels was arduous, as there was no way for him to navigate to a specific level. If he wanted to get another stab at something, he had to go back to the main menu and play through every single level that came before it. But he didn't let that deter him. He wanted the next world record to be a huge step up, not just another 1 to 2 second improvement. Finally, on November 30th, 2009, he had pieced together the completion that he was looking for. Starting around level 9, the gameplay was noticeably better. Instead of waiting before each rapidly moving obstacle, Shiroma nearly bulldozed through the entire level without slowing down. In level 12, he skipped an entire cycle at the start, eventually equating to a level completion that was nearly twice as fast. At the start of level 14, there was absolutely no waiting. Shiroma just dug right in. In level 17, he saved about 5 seconds by skipping a cycle at the end.
Oh, he's about to do a big
in
chunk.
level 23, he didn't wait for an easier cycle. Shiroma cut the completion time for yet another level in half. The strategy for the end of level 24 was much improved. The inaccuracies in level 26 were cleaned up. Level 27 had a much faster approach. The lines taken in level 28 were far more optimal. Level 29 was played with absolutely no fear, and level 30 was optimal as always. The final time, 6:41. Shiroma had improved his record by nearly 2 whole minutes. With this run, Shiroma proved that
there's got to be someone else, right? Someone's gonna step up
with the game. He cut through each level like butter, performing movements that probably looked impossible to anyone viewing back in 2009. If he quit now, it would almost certainly be years before anybody could hope to topple his record. However, he still had more to do.
Oh,
on December 11th,
he wasn't satisfied.
2009, Shiroma claimed the next record in his conquest to completely dominate the world's hardest game. Looking at the run, there was not a single facet that could be pointed out as being suboptimal. The new path taken in level 24 was just ridiculous, and all of the strategies used in his 641 had seemingly been executed to perfection. Up to this point, Shiroma was only uploading his runs to the Japanese video sharing site Nico Nico. However, this time, he decided to upload his achievement to YouTube so he could share it with a wider audience, a decision that would eventually pay off. It was a steady performer at first, but after a few years of simmering, the view count just started soaring, reaching over 15 million views and counting. So yes, this is the other highly viewed World's Hardest Game video that was alluded to earlier, nearly matched with Hachiman's 17 million view completion. It's pretty amazing that 2 of the most viewed speedruns ever performed were of a Flash game made by a 16-year-old in his spare time. The internet truly does work in some pretty incredible ways.
Yeah.
On a personal note, Shiroma 629 was the very first speedrun I ever remember watching back in the early 2010s, and I recall just sitting there in complete disbelief. This was a game where I was taking hundreds of deaths to get past the first chunk of levels, and this guy was able to complete the whole thing in 6.5 minutes without dying a single time. This is the run that initially built my curiosity when it came to speedrunning, as I learned that the simple Flash games that I enjoyed playing had so much potential just waiting to be unlocked. Without this run,
that's it. I'm about to become a
speedrunner. I'd be in
speedrunner.
the same spot in the speedrunning community that I am today. It seemed like Shiroma had finally perfected his craft, but he knew that there was still one level in particular that needed to be improved. The target? Level 18. In all of his previous records, the strategy had always been the same. Clear 3 rows of coins going to the right, clear 1 row going back to the left, and clear the remaining 3 moving right again towards the goal. Even if all of the rows were able to be cleared in 2 trips across the level instead of 3, a final movement to the right would still be required to reach the goal, meaning that the strat couldn't be done any more optimally. However, on January 11th, he got to show off a brand new method,
like going
that
like up, down, up, down, up, down, up,
effectively cut the number
down.
of trips down to 1.
This man's a menace.
Being nearly tied with his 629 going into level 18, he left 8 seconds ahead. Shiroma figured out that by buffering up and right at the start of level 19, the player would just not hit any of the enemies, allowing him to complete it without ever slowing down. Combined with slightly more optimal movement in the last 10 levels, Shiroma grew his lead to 12 seconds and scored himself a 617. Now,
Yeah,
this
he really
had to
did
be
copy
it.
the DVD.
Second place was 2 minutes and 20 seconds behind him. Each level looked like it had been perfected. What else could possibly be done to push the time any lower?
Is it gonna be another guy? I'm like curious if a new challenger approaches, or is it just gonna be this same man? This would be a cool bucket list though, to like actually beat this game. I don't need to speedrun it, but
14 more seconds erased. Shiroma had somehow figured out yet another assortment of new strategies all on his own, each one being some sort of cycle skip. In level 3, instead of waiting after collecting the coin as intended, Shiroma was able to barely maneuver back to the goal in the same cycle, barely dodging the enemies on both the way in and on the way out. In level 17, he figured out that it was barely possible to move ahead of the enemy by buffering down and right at the start of the level, which doesn't equate to any time save because of how the cycles work out later in the level, but does make for a pretty funny swag strat. In level 25,
Oh,
he
just
completely
flexing
cut
on
out
people.
all of the waiting by buffering down at the start and barely squeezing through the spinner a cycle early. Finally, in 27, he figured out that it was possible to reach the goal from the top corner with the bar still in front of it, skipping having to wait for it to move back up. With tighter execution in some of the other levels, Shiroma set a new record of 603 on March 31st, 2010. This was finally the run he had been looking for. 2 minutes and 34 seconds ahead of second
this is the one. Like this was the one finally.
Decided to take a rest atop his throne. He had completely dismantled the world's hardest game almost entirely on his own, pushing the game to heights that were inconceivable for many back in 2010. Back then, it seemed obvious that this record was going to stand for a long while. But would it truly be able to stand the test of time?
Honestly, I don't want to see someone beat Shiroma. Uh-oh. Wait. Who's this?
Seven years passed by, and nobody had even come close. It was the real deal. Shiroma's record was truly almost a decade ahead of its time. There were multiple zero-death completions uploaded to YouTube during this span, but in terms of speed, Pazula's 709 performed on March 21st, 2017
12 years
the
ago.
closest anyone had gotten, a run which unfortunately appears to have been lost to time. However, thanks to this passage of time, Pazula had access to the Cool Math version of the game, released in 2013, which had a built-in level selector, allowing him to practice the game much more efficiently than Shiroma ever could.
Cheater!
For 2 weeks, Pazula poured in attempts, inching closer to the record. By the 15th of April, he had a 610, just 7 seconds away.
Ooh.
He got onto a run that started off a
But it
bit
seems like this is one of those like 7 seconds is still like a lot to shave off.
slower than
Like a
Shiroma,
lot.
but after implementing a more optimal route in level 8, he was able to pull a bit ahead. Pazula saved a bit more time after implementing a new death-defying strategy in the middle of level 10. The lead expanded further after he cut straight towards the goal after collecting the last coin in level 16 instead of moving around the enemy. In level 18, Pazula used a slightly different path that was a bit easier but about the same speed. He took a cleaner path through level 24 and had a 4-second lead going into level 26, putting him on pace for the first sub-6 in the game's history. And then the lead was wiped away. Pazula exited the level a second behind. However, he had one final trick up his sleeve. Going through the middle of level 27 was certainly a lot more difficult, but it could cut out a lot of waiting and unnecessary movement up to the coin. Pazula executed the new route almost flawlessly and pulled 2.5 seconds ahead of Shiroma.
Oh.
He matched Shiroma's death-defying movement in level 28 and took a more optimal path in 29, which grew the lead back to 4 seconds. Pazula, once again, had the potential to break what was almost certainly the game's final minute barrier. All he had to do was hug the wall to the finish. Staring death in the face, he decided not to risk it and moved around the enemy, claiming a new record of 6 minutes flat. After 2,572
Interesting.
days, Shiroma's record had finally been beaten. Unfortunately, for Pazula, a deathless run and a sub-6 were going to have to wait. After taking a short break, Pazula went back to doing attempts with some new strategies under his belt. He got onto a run that had a strong first 5 levels, but lost around 2 seconds in level 6 from a quick death.
I mean,
However,
like obviously there's you could categorize them differently, like record for, you know, deathless, whatever. But that's so impressive. The fact he beat the deathless time after dying.
Approach in level 7. But hold on, how was he able to just phase through the enemies while moving around at the bottom of the level? If you've ever played this game before, you may know about a weird glitch in level 7 where you can seemingly stay invincible if you just stay at the same Y level that the game starts you out at. If you move up or down even a little bit, the enemies can hit you once again. You still have to collect the coins, meaning that you can't just cheese the entire level by holding down the right button, but it is still a pretty fun thing to mess around with. The position Pazula gets to by tapping up once from the bottom of the level just so happens to be another one of these seemingly random
Did he find
invincibility
this?
events. So here's the flaw with the game's collision detection that allows this to happen. The player has 5 hit detection points arranged in a cross pattern, one in the middle of each edge and one in the center, while the coin collision is determined with a simple bounding box check. For the game to count an interaction with an enemy as a hit, the enemy must overlap one of these 5 test points. This means that the player can move quite a bit inside an enemy from the corner without taking a hit, while going in from the edge spells instant doom, facets that were likely intended by the developer. However, this system starts to break down because of flaws that exist in Flash Player itself. As it turns out, for a hit to be registered, an enemy must essentially overlap the same one of these 5 points for 2 frames in a row, a phenomenon that is very similar to how Spike Glitch in Red Ball works. In Flash Player, point-to-pixel checks are judged based on whatever the previously rendered frame was. Let's say we are in a scenario where an enemy moves into the player's right contact point. The game first checks if the point is within the bounding box of the enemy, as this check is orders of magnitude faster than performing a full point-to-pixel check on every single frame regardless of how far apart the player and enemy are. Since the point is inside the bounding box, the game goes ahead and performs the full point-to-pixel check with the enemy. However, because the previously rendered frame still looks like this, the check fails, as no pixels from the rendered enemy are overlapping the point. On the next frame, the enemy moves off of the player's right contact point. The game first performs the bounding box check, but it expectedly fails. Therefore, the game doesn't run the full point-to-pixel check on the previously rendered frame that would have
the ball's
found the
only in
two
it for one
overlapping.
frame instead of 2
Gotta
frames.
love those janky built-in Flash player functions. Essentially, the only zones where an enemy can be lethal are ones where it overlaps itself for 2 consecutive frames. Because the enemies in level 7 are moving so fast, the regions of enemy overlap are small, meaning that as long as all 5 of the character's collision points are not in these areas, it cannot be hit. Unfortunately, because of how unusual this looked and how ubiquitous no-clipped completions of the game were on YouTube, Pazula had plenty of people in the comments calling him a hacker and a cheater, a trend that, unfortunately, would not die out with this video. Pazula got a bit behind. After collecting the first coin, it was just barely possible to squeeze behind this enemy without waiting for the next cycle, leading to about 7 seconds of time save, mostly thanks to the cycles later in the level lining up more favorably as a result. Going into level 20, Pazula was easily on pace for a sub 6. He maintained the same 5.5 second lead going into level 26, and after completing the level without dying, he was now over 10 seconds ahead. This run was on pace to skip an entire 10-second barrier, having the potential for a 549. Unfortunately, in level 28, disaster struck. One death right at the start, and one death in the middle of the second section. That lead shrunk to just 4.4 seconds. Thankfully, the rest of the run was smooth sailing, and Pazula slipped under the last enemy in level 30 to claim a new record of 5 minutes and 55 seconds, the first sub 6 in the game's history. Pazula decided to take yet another break after attaining this milestone, but that didn't mean the game as a whole was cooling off. Competition on the leaderboard was stronger
I'll be
than ever,
curious to see
as
like who
inspired
comes out on
runners
top.
like HS Blue to push their times lower and lower. Finally, on February 28th, 2018, Pazula came back with a 546, with almost all of the time save coming from him cleaning up all 3 of his deaths. Indeed, Pazula had finally managed to complete his first ever deathless run of the game. Like had been
Wait, that's so intriguing. Like all his other times, they weren't deathless.
the case with Shiroma's 603, there was once again a run in first place that was nearly perfect for all of the strategies known at the time, with him only lacking the enemy weave in level 10 that he had pulled off in his 6 flat. This one had the potential to stand for quite a while. However, third place runner HS Blue would soon discover something that could blow the game wide open once again. On March 7th, HS Blue uploaded a new PB of 615 that had a pretty strange anomaly in level 17. He was able to partially clip into this wall while moving down towards the exit. So how on earth does that work? Essentially, the game uses the same edge points to check for collisions with walls that it does to check for collisions with enemies.
Okay, so couple
this
frames.
means that it's possible to clip slightly into the corner of each wall, since none of the collision points are being hit. If the player moves into a position that puts one of the collision points out of bounds, the game will move the player at 3 pixels per frame, the game's normal speed cap for movement, in the opposite direction until it is back in bounds. However, if the player starts holding the direction key opposite this force, they will be able to stay inside the wall, as
I'm surprised
the
that
two
wasn't
frame
found
velocities
sooner.
will cancel out. This is exactly what happened in HS Blue's run. On this frame, he was holding down and left, which caused him to clip slightly inside of the wall, and on this frame, he switched from holding left to holding right, allowing him to stay inside of it as he moved down. In this scenario, this maneuver was frame perfect, though he had done it by complete accident, and it didn't really accomplish anything. However,
But
the imp-will
this is
mechanic
gonna be the
soon
game
became
changer.
obvious. On August 22nd, HS Blue was able to implement wall clipping in a useful fashion, as he claimed a perfect level 1 time of 3.867 seconds, a run which has now been tied by 21 other people. In the run, HS Blue first clips into this
You can literally
corner
just
by
copy
holding
the
down
method.
right, frame perfectly releases the down button to stay inside the wall, and then frame perfectly hits the up button to keep the player inside the wall while moving to the right. On this frame, the player moves 3 pixels to the right as usual, but now also moves up 3 pixels, as the top collision point is no longer being activated. The game then detects that the player's left collision point is touching a wall, so it moves the player 3 pixels towards the right to force it out. Because of wall clipping, HS Blue moves 3 pixels up and 6 pixels to the right in a single frame,
Boom.
double the game's intended speed cap, which in this instance saves a single frame from 2 frame perfect inputs. Alright, so wall clipping wasn't exactly a revolutionary new strategy yet, but with enough time to simmer, there was hope that someone would actually figure out how to save some decent time with it.
Oh,
However,
you betcha.
while people were still searching for more applications for this new technique, Pazula decided to come back and
Pazula's
completely
back!
shock the community. August 28th, 2018.
2018.
Pazula streams world record attempts of the world's hardest game to a large audience of 0 viewers. His splits show that his current PB is
Why do you
a
have to roast him like
5:31,
that?
15 seconds faster than his leaderboard world record. Though he never decided to upload the run, he is laser focused on his mission of completing the game in less than 5 minutes and 30 seconds. He is playing a version of the game that he has modified to include an in-game timer for each level and the whole run. With built-in timing, resetting, and level navigation functionality, this mod has been instrumental in helping him discover and practice the multitude of new strategies that he is seeking to implement. In level 3, he uses a position-based setup to save a single frame. In level 5, he
love
does
that.
more moving and less waiting, as he allows one of the enemies to clip him on the corner. He hits a much faster cycle while collecting the last coin in level 7. And in level 10, he hits all 3 possible weaves. He sneaks under this enemy elevator in level 12 to save a bit of waiting. He bulldozes through level 13 without stopping a single time. He takes a significantly faster route in level 16.
Dude, Pazula's on a mission.
Death-defying third coin grab to save a hefty chunk of time. He collects all of the coins in the first 2/3 of level 18 without stopping a single time.
Yeah, to be
Swiftly
clear,
passing through the
okay, Shroma, I don't know if Shroma's gonna make a comeback, but he'll forever have my heart.
enemies as they move up and down. He cuts through these enemies in level 22 without stopping and completes level 24 without letting go of the right key until the very end, utilizing a new route that he discovered. He goes to the right first in level 26, which makes the cycles line up better for the rest of the level. The best possible time is 5:28. All he needs to do is complete the last 4 levels without dying.
Pazula, don't you
just
dare
like
die.
He has done countless times before.
Pazula just loves to... I mean, listen, it might be a little cruel to say, but he likes to choke when it comes to the final level. Final levels.
.529. There it was.
Zwarp.
Shroma 629, the most influential world's hardest game speedrun ever performed, had just been toppled by over a minute.
That's crazy.
Again, the game had a world record where almost every single detail went exactly according to plan. The video received a good amount of traction, and many viewers and fellow runners offered their congratulations in the comments. However, there was also fellow runners offered their
Yeah! Look at that little guy.
congratulations in the comments. However, there was also expectedly a tsunami of detractors that instantly called the run cheated once they saw Pazula getting hit by the enemies in level 7 without dying. I guess some people just aren't able to fathom that a Flash game programmed by a 16-year-old back in 2007 may not have every single bolt tightened to spec. Regardless, this impressive show of dominance placed Pazula 31 seconds ahead of second place, meaning that this one certainly had the chance to stand for a while.
See, that one's like, I feel like almost not even glitching. That's just like, you know what I mean? Exploiting? Is that really like even exploiting? Is exploiting just doing something, like what's the definition of like exploiting exactly? I guess maybe it is. Maybe it is like, maybe he's exploiting but not glitching, because those are different things, right? Like when it comes to like gaming, exploiting and glitching, are they the same thing?
Didn't end up staying on top for as long as most people may have expected, as a new runner named Aaron would quickly make himself known. Joining the community in September of 2018 with a YouTube channel called The IL Guy Runs, Aaron made his first mark with, well, individual level speedruns. He beat or tied the world record in every level aside from 3, 18, and 30, a very impressive feat.
Oh.
However, on November 18th, 2018, he dropped something even more substantial, a second place full game personal best of 546. The IL Guy was no longer just the IL Guy. He was now the full game guy.
The full game guy.
Aaron kept grinding, improving his PB to a 539, then a 538, then a 530, and finally, a new world record of 526. In the run, Aaron took the other available path.
I wonder who this guy could have been.
It turned out that it was actually slightly faster. In level 18, he used Pazula's no-stop strategy the whole way through. And in level 21, he maneuvered around the enemies after collecting the third coin instead of getting sandwiched in between them. He used a faster return route in level 27, and he pulled off a frame-perfect collision cheese in level 29 to squeeze through these enemies early. He didn't do the quick exit in level 7 or the risky third coin grab in level 16, but all of the other crazy stuff that he implemented allowed him to beat Pazula's monumental record by 3 seconds.
Will Pazula be pissed by this?
None of these strategies could have been found and perfected without the help of Pazula's speedrun mod. Back when Sharoma pulled off his 603, the game didn't even have a level selector. It was pretty much impossible to practice anything outside of just doing runs over and over again. Things had come quite a long way.
Dude, this is like one of those when you think of like, you know, I mean, someone new breaks like a record in like an old sport or something. It makes you think if that person from back then did it now, would they be the best or like better or whatever? And that's what I feel like I almost want to say that for Sharoma. Sharoma would be top dog.
And Aaron's implementation of this ridiculous strategy in 29 to save a fraction of a second was pretty emblematic of that. For over a year now, HS Blue had slowly been climbing up the leaderboard.
HS Blue's been trying
closer and closer to the world record, something that he very much desired. Just when he felt like he could finally chase it down, Aaron leaped into the first place spot.
And maybe not a ton of people were really trying to push it to this limit. That's crazy though, that Sharoma still though, whatever, how long he's been doing it, is still right there. And also, did Hachiman make a little return for a second? Wait, when did Hachiman get there over Sharoma?
Into the first place spot. However, he wasn't going to let that deter him. He came back and started setting massive personal bests. First a 545, then a 542, then a 529, then a 527, and then a 526, tying Aaron's record to the second, but actually clocking in just 4 frames slower. Still, this run did have some impressive new tech, namely a double coin grab at the end of level 6 and a much faster cycle in level 8 that required a frame-perfect wall clip to avoid hitting the enemy. Finally, wall clipping had a substantial use in full game runs. HS Blue omitted the third weave in level 10 and took a safer approach in level 16.
Sharoma created the third weave,
but he was still very much on pace for a sizable new world record. Unfortunately, disaster struck in level 18, and he had to revert to Pazula's old method of completing the level, which lost him about 3 seconds. Regardless, he pressed on. No matter how long it took him, he was going to keep playing until he got the record outright. Unfortunately for him, that very same day, Aaron moved the goalposts once again. Aaron uploaded a video that began with him resetting at the start of level 1. Yes, he was actually going for the double frame perfect IL wall boost to save a single frame, something which he thankfully hit on the next attempt. He didn't go for the wall clip in level 8 because he couldn't find the right window size to get it to work. Oh, I guess I forgot to mention that every wall clip in the game is dependent on the game's window size. Thanks, Flash.
Window
but he did
size?
manage to get a corner cut in level 10 to save a cycle, also hitting all 3 of the weaves. In level 12, he got past the final enemy obstacle a cycle early. But in level 30, he sadly missed collecting this coin on his first go. And he got to the end too late to be able to slide under the last enemy. It was as if the ghost of Pazula's 6 flat had come to haunt him. Aaron lost around a second, ending with a 524 instead of a 523. However, since he still improved the record and wasn't on the verge of a milestone, this mistake probably didn't matter that much. HS Blue's attempt counter continued to rack up. There was no time better than the present for him to go for the world record. Aaron would likely continue to push his times further and further, making HS Blue's goal more and more difficult to attain.
Somebody's gotta stop him.
For 4 years, he had been playing the world's hardest game, hoping that one day he could have the record to himself. All he needed to do was match his 526 without messing up level 18, and the title would be his. On May 31st,
That's dedication.
2019, he got onto a run that started as planned. He hit the wall clip in 8, but didn't go for the clip or weave in level 10. He didn't do the fast ending for level 12 because there was simply no need. He was still
Meeting it
easily
with the
on pace
spoon
without
Chipotle,
it.
so it might
He
be
messed
tougher.
up the last coin grab in level 16, but it didn't end up costing him very much. He approached level 18, the same level that had essentially killed his world record chances during his 526. But this time,
Bop, 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 bop. He's won with the balls.
disaster struck again.
Oh,
He didn't
that wasn't
lose
good.
a full 3 seconds this time, but his world record prospects
I
had
thought he was
still
doing
been
good.
flushed down the drain. However, there was still one Hail Mary strategy that
Whoops.
could potentially save it. Task 23.
That was just amazing. That was like frame perfect just to collect all those. Dude, this is just crazy muscle memory.
I did it.
Did you do it? You did it?
4 years. I've been dreaming of this. I did it. 4 years. I've been dreaming of this.
Oh,
Miraculously, he had done it. It's hard to overstate how much this run meant to HS Blue. He had put so much time and energy towards this grind. He had dreamed about having this record for years, and now he had it. The first sentence of the run description puts it best. If you put your heart and mind to it, you can do anything. Funnily enough, without Aaron's mistake in level 30 of his 524, essentially the last mistake that one can possibly make in a World's Hardest Game speedrun, HS Blue wouldn't have become the undisputed full second champion of the game with this run. Whether he would have later claimed the record outright or not, I guess we'll never know, but it is funny to look back and see how perfectly the stars aligned for this moment. Indeed, HS Blue seemed to have achieved his end goal with the game, but Aaron certainly had not. Aaron knew that there was still plenty of things he could do to push the record to a new 10-second barrier, 5-1x. His 524 didn't have the quick exit in level 7, wall clip in 8, task 23, and some other individual level strategies that could potentially be implemented. And, of course, there was that pesky mistake in level 30 that had cost him an entire second. The whole summer passed without anything new, but finally, he managed to piece
Aaron
together
said this is the
something
real
pretty
world,
incredible.
Blue. You don't
Perfect,
keep
but he
records
still
forever.
couldn't go for the wall clip in 8 because he still couldn't find the right window size to make it work. So what was going on? At this point, pretty much every single World's Hardest Game runner was using the official standalone Adobe Flash Player for their runs, as it was way more convenient, allowed for better performance, and allowed the game to be played at any window size, including full screen. However, Aaron's platform of choice was Internet Explorer. For whatever reason, a web browser that had been discontinued and replaced by Microsoft because of how bad it was, actually ran the game better on his dusty old computer. Aaron's interesting platform of choice made it far more difficult for him to find a window size where 8 wall clip and the other strategies he was going for all worked, so he just decided not to bother with it. Despite this unfortunate handicap, Aaron knew that he could still shatter the game's next 10-second barrier. He pressed on, nailing the wall clip and weaves in level 10. He essentially stayed perfect going into level 23, where he went for the task strat first implemented by HS Blue. He got it. Granted that he didn't mess up level 30, the run was now on pace for a 520 flat, just a bit shy of his goal. However, he had a plan that could just barely nudge it over the edge. He entered level 26 and proceeded to do this on the right side. Another death-defying weave. He was now on pace to break into a new 10-second barrier. All he had to do was clutch the ending.
I mean, Aaron just seems like he clutches. Whoa. Did anyone else think this map was easier? I feel like most of the time when they show this map, they just show them like just scooting over to here. They haven't shown that you have to go like around the whole thing. Am I crazy? I feel like they always just show like and then in. I didn't realize you had to like. Maybe I just missed it. Maybe I'm the only dumb one.
There it was, 519.633. Plenty of geniuses in the YouTube comments completely ignored the pinned message explaining the game's collision mechanics to call it out for being fake. But it was absolutely real. Aaron took a well-deserved break after this run, as it was unlikely that anyone would even get close to challenging his throne. But he still knew in the back of his mind that more could be done. Going into 2020, it became apparent that there were more TAS or IL-only strategies that could potentially be brought over to full game runs. First, there was a wall clip in level 6 to collect the last coin without having to revolve with the spinner, saving over a second. Next, there was a frame-perfect turnaround here in level 7 that allows the player to phase through this enemy, saving around half a second. Additionally, there was a cycle skip in level 12 that required a frame-perfect elevator entry, perfect character alignment to squeeze under these enemies, and absolutely no slowdown for the rest of the level, allowing for a ridiculous 2.5 seconds to be saved. Finally, there was a frame-perfect entry in level 26 where the player can go under the dots at the top right instead of going over them, ultimately saving around a second. Of these 4, Aaron recognized that the strategies in 7 and 26 were the most realistic to implement. And, at last, he had found a way to hit the wall.
Somebody stop this man!
Which meant that he could save an additional 2.5 seconds. If everything went according to plan, a 5:14 was not out of the question. Now, he just had to piece everything together. a run. Aside from a somewhat suboptimal level 26, every single thing went exactly according to plan, and the expected potential for these strategies was matched exactly. This run is absolutely one of the greatest Flash game speedruns ever performed. The time and dedication that Aaron has put towards perfecting his craft is truly inspiring, and there is very little chance of this record being beaten anytime soon.
Oh my
He stands
goodness.
in first by over 9 seconds, as HS Blue still sits in a distant second with his 523. As you may have
Dude, increasing by still like another 9 seconds seems insane. I mean, listen, if he's the best, then he's just the best.
guessed, this run, a true cornerstone of Flash game speedrunning, was performed on Internet Explorer. You really can't make this stuff up. Aaron may come back again, but as it stands, he is the undisputed champion of the world's hardest game. However, it doesn't mean that it's bound to stay that way forever.
Oh, just blue? Dude, that'd be crazy if all of a sudden Sharoma makes his return. Holy shit.
In December of 2007, a high school student released a game that completely changed the internet. The game challenged players to not just overcome it, but to truly conquer it by achieving a completion with the fewest number of deaths possible. After a player finally managed to achieve a perfect score of 0 deaths, many shifted their attention towards a new challenge, seeing how fast they could complete the game. When Aaron set his current world record of 514, many believed that the human limit for the game was around a 512, as the Task 12 cycle was deemed to be too difficult to implement into runs. However, with Aaron recently building much greater consistency with the strategy in practice, many now believe that a sub 510 could potentially be attained one day. The most recent full game task is a 457.
A 510 can be done as long as Aaron does it.
And authored by Steve-O, which pulls off ridiculous wall clip and hitbox abuse strategies in almost every single level. Published back in April of 2019, this is the video that truly brought the game into the era of frame-perfect optimization, making Steve-O responsible for almost all of the strategies that are used in top-level World's Hardest Game speedruns today. Expectedly, this task is a bit outdated, with there being many levels where small improvements could be made, but it's still funny to see that humans have been able to match this task in 25 out of 30 of the levels, actually pulling ahead by a frame in 4 of those. The human sum of best currently sits at a 459.6, the majority of the difference coming from level 20, where the task saves.
Wait, so there's a new record, or what was that sentence? Are they saying like the most possible if you put together all of the single best runs of each map together? Is that what that was?
A hefty 55 frames by hitting a cycle that is deemed humanly unviable. There are simply way too many
bot runs
inputs required, nearly triple digits, for a sub 5 to ever have a chance of being pulled off in a full game run. But man, it is pretty amazing to think about how far things could theoretically go. But looking back, it's crazy to see how far the world's hardest game has come in the past 15 years. Nowadays, it is the 3rd most played game of all time on both addicting games and armor games, having a combined 95 million plays on those 2 websites alone.
Oh, does that almost seem low, or am I just downplaying how much 95 million is?
As Snubby moved further into adulthood, he eventually started going by Steven instead of Stevie, which is why his name is different on all of the newer installments and shorts. His web game development days seem to be behind him, with him pulling the plug on Snubbyland and all of his other websites. But the legacy that he has left behind on the internet is nothing short of incredible. He created one of the most popular and memorable series of games ever released on the web, with the first game in particular truly being a lightning-in-a-bottle creation. Its formula inspired people to keep playing the game over and over again until they could truly master it, and their efforts to push the game closer and closer to its limit have been viewed in awe by tens of millions of people. Each record holder shaped the game in their own unique way. Hatredcopter helped lay the foundation for low-death completions. Hachiman was the first to verifiably achieve the game's definition of perfection. Shiroma unlocked the game's boundless potential. Pazula revolutionized the game with his practice mod and innovative discoveries. HS Blue broke the game wide open with wall clipping, while also showcasing the power of never giving up. And Aaron pushed the game near its
Aaron's just an absolute psychopath.
Massive, shocking records that always seem to come out of nowhere. Over 15 years, this game went from being beaten, to being perfected, to being completely dismantled and dominated. Speedrunners are the ones who realized that to truly conquer the world's hardest game, it was necessary to completely redefine what perfection meant. Thanks for watching. Enormous thank you to Aaron, Pazula, Danicker, Frames, HS Blue, Eyeball, and Shiroma for making this project possible. I'm sorry that this one took quite a while to put together, but I hope that it was worth the wait.
It was.
It's hard to believe that we are this.
It was.